What's the first sign a kid has terrible parents? They form an unhealthy attachment to any authority figure and treat any kind adult as a parental figure or friend even when it isn't appropriate. It makes kids much more vulnerable to further abuse as they believe they're mature enough for a platonic relationship with grown adults. Speaking from experience, unfortunately. This is a good one. I'm friends with a married couple who adopted a daughter who was, to put it mildly, sexually assaulted by her own father. She took to me and treated me like a father figure. Her adopted parents are both women, for context, almost immediately. Every time I go to their house, she asks me to go for a walk with her and just absolutely trauma dumps things no 11-year-old should ever have to go through. It's heartbreaking. I'm always there for her and supportive, but the second I get home I just break down. I'm just a kid. I'm still just a little kid. I shouldn't even know about these things yet. She's an amazing, intelligent, strong little girl, and I really hope her future throws her past into a wood chipper. Not being bathed. Distracted, hungry, injured, lethargic, behavior issues, not wanting to go home. There is one kid I work with that looks and sounds like he never fucking sleeps. 4th grader. He has dark circles and speaks like he's operating at 50 to 60% capacity. Literally operates on slow-mo. Could also be hypothyroidism, chronic infection, hemoglobinopathy, endocrine disorder, depression, chronic allergies, chronic infection amongst others. I don't know if it's the first sign, but I was teaching a small class of children and one child in particular would speak very negatively of himself, as though someone in his life, like a parent, had said those things to him on many occasions and he'd internalized them. There was one day in particular he'd answered a question incorrectly and then proceeded to call himself stupid over and over. I reassured him he's not stupid, but you could tell by the look on this poor boy's face he believed he was. Edit. To those saying it's not always a sign of bad parenting, yes, I agree with you. Sometimes kids have other issues going on unrelated to parenting. But sometimes kids say these things because they've been told them before. You just never know what's causing it. I didn't say it's always a sign of bad parenting, but it certainly can be. My daughter used to do that. In her case, it was a form of OCD called perfectionism OCD. Thankfully, therapy is helping her work through it. Oh yeah, that can definitely be the reason for that type of behavior as well. Not always a sign of bad parenting. In the case of this boy though, I think he lived with an unstable mother, possibly an addict of some kind? I don't remember, this was 10 years ago, while his father was totally out of the picture. Never met the mother, but his grandpa was a very nice old man. I suspect the mother was not the greatest. Attaches themselves very quickly and inappropriately to any adult who gives them attention and kindness. OMG. That was me as a kid in kindergarten. I thought the dinner lady was my best friend and invited her to my birthday party. She came. She was amazing and I think I probably wanted her to be my mom. This is the best and worst story in one short paragraph. They flinch or jump at the slightest movement. Edit. I know that there are reasons other than abuse for a child to flinch like this. Context is also important and everything should be taken into consideration before anything is done in order to do what is best for them. Oh man, now I'm just thinking about that TikTok video of the baby/toddler who flinched at his dad's movement. In the early 2000s, I was part of a research project where we surveyed mothers of diapered children aged 4 and under. The purpose of the project was to gauge the need for local diaper banks. Most of the questions we asked these mothers had to do with their income, their employment status, how often they bought diapers, how much they spent on diapers, how many diapers they used per day, whether they felt secure enough to afford diapers, and so on and so forth. One of the questions, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was something like, in the past 12 months, have you waited to change your child's diaper to save money? So many of these women admitted, with shame, that they have allowed their child to pee in their diaper. But they didn't always change the diaper right away because they were afraid they were going to run out of diapers before they could afford another pack. So when I saw Nurse Hannah go on TikTok and proudly admit that she doesn't change her kid's diaper if they peed in it, that was infuriating. I have heard a lot of women admit to this, and those women were poor. They would have never gloated about something like this. Nurse Hannah is not poor. She is just a lazy piece of shit mother. Another behavior I've noticed is the art of becoming invisible, the child who tries their best not to be noticed, whether it be at home or in the school environment. They're usually the ones who never raise their hand to answer questions, even though they may know the answer, and they seldom initiate or join conversations. This tendency is not because they're naturally introverted, but rather because being unnoticed is their coping mechanism. It's their way of avoiding negative attention or criticism at home, where standing out might not have the best outcomes. They become masters of blending into the background, often coming across as extremely independent, when in reality, it's a learned survival skill that's been ingrained from walking on eggshells around unpredictable caregivers. It's bittersweet when these patterns manifest because on the one hand, they display a certain resilience, but on the other hand, it becomes a barrier to forming healthy, transparent relationships where they feel safe to be seen and heard. This one hits hard. I am of the entirely unsubstantiated opinion that there is a series of behaviors that make a person forgettable, and I mastered the hell out of them, subconsciously more or less. I just slip right out of people's heads. When I wanted to avoid my family, I simply left the room. It wouldn't be till an hour later that someone would look around and wonder where I was. Now I work to avoid things like that. Useful when I was a kid, but severely maladaptive as an adult who no longer has close ties to their family. OMG, that was me. Afraid to make mistakes. They freeze or panic over small things, like spilling a drink. My youngest daughter was like this until she reached middle school. For her, it's a form of OCD that caused it, not abuse. She is a perfectionist to the extreme. My 10-year-old will call me panicking from her dad's house, my ex-husband, if she accidentally spills or breaks something. He is not at all abusive, but he treats mistakes as if the world is ending. At my house, she immediately starts apologizing profusely because of that, and I always gently remind her that mistakes happen and we can always fix it together. The kid that can't attend anything outside of school hours. I'm not talking about the troublemakers either. I'm talking about high-grades overachiever that never gets invited because everyone knows their parents will say no to the smallest inconveniences to their own plans, and their parents are highly discriminatory. The gentrified type with snobbish parents. That kid's entire life is being run by their parents, and they have to comply or their entire existence and support as their kid is questioned by them. 100% chance that kid will have severely lacked social skills and have become a recluse later in life. Don't ask me how I know. As a teacher who has covered every grade level from TK to 12th, I find that younger children with abusive/neglectful parents emulate behaviors through really rough/aggressive role play. They only know what they have been shown. As children get older, I know something is off when I start hearing them talk about sex in a way that is a little too beyond the B/S you hear when 5th to 9th grade kids lie about what they know. Age-inappropriate sexual knowledge has become a more common thing, with easily available pornography. When I was in the 5th grade, I overheard a couple of girls, who were cousins from an overseas U.S. protectorate, talking about crotchless panties. All of that extended family's girls would go back to their homeland when they were 13 or so. The male cousins all stayed stateside. There were a lot of very angry young men in that family. I found out later that the girls were all run as prostitutes by their older female cousins. All of the fathers in that family were Johns. Almost none of the boys from the family that were my age are still alive. Drug addiction and suicide took many of them. They were still probably better off than their female cousins. Oh, if you are in the military and go to off-base brothels, fuck you very much for your service. Yup, I was military overseas, woman. And I lost so much respect when I started seeing my co-workers go into these places. They knew it's trafficking and treated us the same. I got out ASAP. It's not full of heroes, I'll say that much. Answering as someone with terrible parents/grandparents who I was also raised by for years of my life. When I lived with my grandparents, I was super obedient and didn't talk back to anyone. I was known as the nice and quiet kid who wasn't a problem for anyone. What was going on behind the scenes was that I'd get hit if I opposed my grandparents, so I learned that was a bad thing. With my mom, who is neglectful and puts her boyfriends over us, I don't respect her, I don't like her, so I don't care about what she wants, but I'm not dumb enough to be so rebellious that I'll do anything to jeopardize my future plans. I saw an example of talking back to teachers, and I can see where that would be the case, but it could also be something to look out for in someone who is overly obedient. Agreed, while children should respect boundaries set by adults, they should also be free to ask questions and voice opinions. Personally, I was overly obedient as a child because it simply wasn't safe to ask questions or voice opinions. In my opinion, other signs of poor parenting include the children being dirty all the time, living in a household with fleas/frequent head lice/other parasites which are not typical for the area, especially if the parent/s appear to be quite clean and manicured. If children apologize constantly, especially in unnecessary situations, and get very anxious for making small errors. If the child has poor emotional regulation, relative to their age group. If the child cannot take no for an answer, especially when the no is accompanied by a rational and kindly delivered explanation for why they are being denied something by the adult. If the child's health is poor due to environmental factors. For example, having multiple rotting teeth removed due to poor diet. Or if they have a cough/other illness for many months without being taken to see a DR, etc., that's a sign that the parent isn't prioritizing their child's health. If the child gets weird injuries or illnesses that just don't make sense. If the child starts experiencing sudden major changes in their emotional state. I grew up in a pretty severe domestic violence household. Me and my siblings all moved out as soon as we could and have minimal contact with our parents. If you know a child who's displaying the above signs, please treat them with a little kindness and consistency. Kindness can make an incredibly positive impact on a child who comes from a home devoid of it. In your opinion, what is the first sign that a child has terrible parents? Write in the comments. Also, do you want a second part? Thanks for watching. Subscribe. Bye.